Greetings, fellow time travelers. Welcome back to Treasures of History, where we uncover the hidden mysteries of lost civilizations and dive deep into the secrets that shaped our world. Today, we're journeying back over 3,000 years to ancient Egypt. But this isn't the Egypt you think you know. This is a story about a young pharaoh who dared to challenge the gods themselves, a revolutionary who tried to rewrite 3 millennia of tradition overnight. Imagine this. For over 3,000 years, Egypt worshipped countless deities. Amun-Ra, the king of gods, Osiris, lord of the underworld, each with magnificent temples and devoted followers. Then, suddenly, a young pharaoh appears and declares, "There is only one God." Was Akhenaten history's first monotheist? A visionary prophet ahead of his time? Or a dangerous revolutionary who paid the ultimate price for his dream? Before we unveil this incredible mystery, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. Trust me, you don't want to miss the ancient secrets we're about to reveal. And tell us in the comments, what time is it where you are right now, and where are you watching from? Now, grab your favorite drink, settle in, and let's begin this extraordinary journey into the heart of forgotten Egypt. The world before the revolution. Picture this scene with me. Over 3,000 years ago, Egypt was the land of dreams, where the Nile merged with the sky and every stone whispered tales of eternity. This was the New Kingdom era, and Thebes, modern-day Luxor, was Egypt's beating heart. A city of golden palaces where colossal statues of the gods stood gleaming under the desert sun. Amun-Ra, god of wind and power, ruled as the sacred sun disk. Osiris, lord of the afterlife, watched over the dead. Every god had a temple, and every temple held the souls of the people. The streets of Thebes teemed with life. Merchants carried silk from the east, gold from Nubia. The sweet scent of incense filled the air. Priests in their pristine white robes walked with confidence, bearing the secrets of the gods. But here's what will blow your mind. These priests of Amun weren't just religious leaders. They wielded power that sometimes rivaled the pharaohs themselves. They controlled hearts, minds, and destinies across Egypt. The birth of a revolutionary. Into this world was born Amenhotep IV, who would later be known as Akhenaten. He was a young prince raised in the shadow of his father, Amenhotep III. A pharaoh who had led Egypt to the pinnacle of its glory. His mother was Queen Nefertiti, a woman of immense influence, whose eyes saw further than most. In the royal palace at Thebes, young Amenhotep wandered among massive columns decorated with carvings depicting pharaonic victories. He heard the priests' prayers, their voices rising like the wind. But something was different about this prince. He felt something stirring within him. He would gaze at the sky, at the golden sun disk, as if it whispered secrets to him, secrets no one else had discovered.
Why do we worship so many gods? Why can't there be just one God? One deity to unite all hearts and enlighten all minds?
These questions were a spark that would ignite a revolution. The unconventional prince. Life in Thebes revolved around tradition. People offered sacrifices to the gods, fearing Amun's wrath. But Amenhotep IV saw a different world. He saw the sunlight, Aten, as if it were the one true God. He felt this light carried the ultimate truth. His upbringing was far from ordinary. Though a prince, he wasn't like his brothers. He was quiet, contemplative, an art lover who sometimes painted with his own hands. He would meditate by the Nile as it flowed. People said his eyes carried a dream the priests didn't understand, a dream the people couldn't yet grasp. One evening he sat with his mother, Tiye, a woman whose eyes saw beyond the present. She told him about the power of pharaohs, about the importance of preserving Egypt. But she saw something different in him, a heart searching for truth. She knew her son would change history, but she was afraid of the price this change would demand.
My son, the world you dream of is not the world we know. Egypt is strong because of tradition, but I see your heart longs for something more. I worry for you, for what your vision might cost us.
She knew her son would change history, but she was afraid of the price this change would demand. When Amenhotep IV ascended Egypt's throne, he was a young man in his 20s. The royal palace in Thebes overflowed with splendor. Massive columns carved with images of the gods, incense wafting from every corner, and the Nile flowing beyond the walls like ancient stories come to life. But you know, this pharaoh was different. He was quiet, contemplative, walking through the palace gardens, gazing at the sun, at its golden disk illuminating the earth. He felt that this light, Aten, held a profound secret, a secret that transcended Amun's temples and Osiris's statues. In his heart, a dangerous idea began to grow. One God, one light, uniting Egypt beneath one sky. At the royal court, the priests watched this young pharaoh carefully. They heard his whispers, saw his skyward gazes. They grew concerned. Amenhotep IV didn't follow pharaonic traditions. He didn't bow to Amun as his father had. He dreamed of change that would shake Egypt's very foundations. Beside him stood Nefertiti, his queen, a woman of legendary beauty whose eyes held both power and wisdom. Nefertiti wasn't just a queen, she was a partner in his dream.
I listened as he spoke of Aten, of the sunlight that gives life. I supported him, encouraged him. Together we began planning for a future Egypt had never seen.
One evening, Amenhotep sat with Nefertiti on a terrace overlooking the Nile. The water reflected moonlight, and the air carried the scent of lotus flowers. They spoke of Egypt, of the gods, of the power the priests wielded. He saw in her eyes confirmation that the time had come, time to challenge the old order. But you know, this challenge carried risks no one could imagine. In those early days of his reign, Amenhotep IV began showing signs of revolution. He ordered the construction of small temples to Aten, not like Amun's massive temples. These were simple, open structures that allowed sunlight to flood in. People looked on in astonishment. The priests whispered in anger, but he was determined. He believed Aten was the truth, and that Egypt needed this light. Pay attention to this incredible moment. After just a few years on the throne, Amenhotep IV, now calling himself Akhenaten, made a declaration that would echo through history.
Aten, the golden sun disk, is the only god worthy of worship.
This wasn't merely an announcement. It was a challenge to 3,000 years of tradition. It was a declaration of war against the priests of Amun and the entire old order.
You gotta be kidding me. 3,000 years of tradition, and this kid thinks he can just toss it all out? This is war, all right, and Egypt will never be the same.
In the palace at Thebes, Akhenaten sat with Nefertiti, sharing his vision. The light of Aten that grants life, a world free from the many gods that divided people's hearts.
I listened, and honestly my heart filled with faith. I knew this dream was dangerous, but well, we were both determined to see it through.
The massive temples of Amun, with their towering columns and golden statues, stood as symbols of unassailable power. But Akhenaten saw only shadows choking out the truth. Then came the bold commands that really shocked Egypt to its core. Akhenaten ordered the closure of Amun's temples. The priests, who had controlled so much wealth and influence, suddenly found themselves powerless. Inscriptions bearing Amun's name began to be erased from the walls, and his statues were smashed. Akhenaten wanted to erase Egypt's old history entirely. In Thebes' streets, people whispered, some in wonder, some in fear. How dare a pharaoh challenge the gods? But here's what's truly fascinating. Akhenaten didn't just destroy, he created something entirely new.
One night, I stood in a small, open temple dedicated to Aten, beneath a sky full of stars. Light poured down from above, flooding the space. I raised my hands to the sun, praying to Aten as if I was speaking to a living god. A god I could see in everything, in the Nile, in the trees, in life itself.
But the priest watched from afar, their eyes burning with rage. They saw him as a heretic, a man defying the will of the gods.
This declaration wasn't just a religious change, it was a complete revolution. Akhenaten ordered the construction of new temples for Aten, temples without walls, without shadows, open to the sunlight. Artists began creating revolutionary artwork unlike anything seen before. The old carvings showed pharaohs as distant, godlike figures. But Akhenaten's new art showed something shocking. The pharaoh and his family beneath Aten's rays, the sun extending its hands to embrace them. They were depicted as human beings, as a father, a husband, a family, all bathed in sunlight. People stared at these carvings, some with admiration, others with confusion. This was unprecedented in Egyptian art.
But this revolution didn't go unopposed. The priests of Amun, who possessed vast wealth and influence extending to every corner of Egypt, began plotting. They met in secret, discussing the young pharaoh and his dream that threatened their power. In the marketplaces, people debated Akhenaten. Some saw him as a man bearing new light. Others saw him as a danger to Egypt. One day, Akhenaten visited an ancient temple of Amun. The priests stood in silence, watching as he ordered the removal of the god's statue. Silence filled the space, only the sound of hammers breaking stone. Akhenaten stood there, his face calm but filled with determination. He knew this step would change everything.
But Akhenaten's revolutionary vision didn't stop there. What he did next was absolutely unprecedented in Egyptian history. He made a decision that would shock the ancient world. He would abandon Thebes entirely and build a completely new capital city. Imagine the audacity of this move. Thebes had been Egypt's heart for centuries, the city of Amun's great temples, the center of power and tradition. And Akhenaten simply walked away. He chose a virgin site in Middle Egypt, a place untouched by the old gods. He called it Akhetaten, the horizon of Aten, known today as Tel El Amarna.
Yaftar, picture this incredible scene. In the barren desert, under the blazing sun, thousands of workers began constructing a city from nothing. Not just any city, a utopia dedicated entirely to Aten. This wasn't gradual change, this was complete transformation. Akhenaten moved his entire court, his administration, his family to this new capital. He left behind the